I want to take a few minutes today to comment on your recent discussion board regarding cash flow and cash management. In your discussion board, you raised some great points and some great questions, and I wanted to try to talk about those for just a few minutes. A question came up regarding how do you really do cash flow analysis when you are funded by outside sponsors or through fundraising activities. And even with tuition, how do you plan that out? Well, that's really the challenge of cash flow management. What you need to do is clearly establish when you think the monies will be coming in. You need to plan your fundraising activities or your sponsorship program so that funds are coming in at a particular time each year. Because the problem that you run into if you do not do a cash flow analysis is, okay, you don't have your fundraiser until January. Well, in November and December, when you don't have really any funds coming in, how do you pay your employees? Will you need to go to a bank, or do you just tell them, don't worry, it'll be coming in a month or so? It really doesn't work that way. You need to plan your activities around your cash flow needs. The other part of that is when you're dealing with outside fundraising activities such as sponsorships of individuals of your program, you need to make sure in the materials that you print for those individuals and the agreement that they sign to provide you with X number of dollars of funding if it's a sponsorship program, when those funds will be coming in. The other part of that is when you have, for instance, like an auction or some other fundraising activity, do you need to spell out where the monies will be spent? Absolutely. When you do your budget planning, you need to incorporate that. Now, what you can do is have an expectation of, well, you are really hoping to get $50,000 or $100,000, but you're really only going to budget for $30,000 or $35,000, or if it's $50,000 you hope to raise, or if it's $100,000, you're only really going to budget for $75,000 in case there's a shortfall. Because that's always the problem that you deal with. Because one of you asked the question about how do you deal with rising costs of things, inflation. When you plan your budget, you're only expecting a 2% inflation, but yet when you have to pay your bills, the rate of inflation is actually about 15 or 20 or 30%. What do you do when your costs go up? That's why it's really critical to nail down what your expenses are when you do your budget planning and your budget projections, so that when you are looking at how much cash is coming in and how much cash is going out, you clearly understand what you need to do to make sure that you pay your bills. If you don't pay your bills or you don't pay your employees, you're not going to stay in business, no matter how good or how charitable you are. That's the reality of it. Another question that came up is, how do you deal with volunteers, especially in our Catholic schools? When you're asking them to take care of money. Well, I don't care whether it's volunteers or your teachers, whether you're planning for a candy drive or whether you're planning for a prom, whatever the activity would be, you need to clearly establish the guidelines for handling cash in your school. First and foremost, no money should ever be taken out of the school. Someone says, well, we're raising money. Well, it's at the end of the day. What do I do? Very simple. You need to invest several $100s and have what they call a drop safe, where teachers can put the money in an envelope, put it in there, and it's sealed. You need to make sure that cash does not leave the building. Once you've established that, you have to make sure that you have checks and balances. You need to make sure that more than one person counts the money. Now, I know that we all want to believe that all of our volunteers and all of our teachers and all of our administrators are good, holy, and honest people. Unfortunately, sometimes people show their human side and decide that for whatever reason, their needs are more important than the needs of the school. Now, some people say, well, that really won't happen in my area because we're all good. I can tell you of a school that I'm very familiar with where a principal, it's an elementary school in the state of Maryland, where elementary school principal had been there for a number of years. People liked her. She was a great woman. She had done great things for the school in terms of their academic program. The school had been having a cookie drive for years, a candy drive. Of course, everybody thought that when the monies were reported that they were honest. Well, after a while, someone started questioning it, and an external audit was conducted. What the school found out was that this principal, who had been a principal and a Catholic school teacher for years, had absconded with over $225,000. $225,000 that didn't go to the students. I know of another case of a school that had a bingo program. Of course, everyone thought that the person that was running it was doing all the right things. Again, after a little bit of investigation, after about 3 or 4 years, they found out that $185,000 had been taken and never recorded. In this particular case, the parent thought that he could transfer the funds, but unfortunately he gave the school a check because this particular school allowed teachers to have and groups to have outside checking accounts. The check bounced. I know of another school where a new administrator came in and found out that teachers had their own checking accounts in the school's name. They were paying themselves for work that they were doing during the summer. No taxes were ever paid on those. There's federal implications and state implications to that. Those teachers and parent groups could well have been charged for fraud because, and again, they all meant well, but because there were no checks and balances in place. There was a parish in Florida about 3 or 4 years ago where a Monsignor, it was discovered, had absconded with over $1 million of church funds. $1 million that didn't go to help the people in that parish. So cash flow analysis is critical, as well as cash flow management. That's why when you're doing your budget, you need to make sure that you have all the data that's necessary in terms of what you anticipate your expenses would be. Always project slightly higher. And then it's much easier to go ahead at the end to have a little bit extra rather than saying, I'm sorry, we can't pay you as a teacher or as a staff member. We have to wait for the next fundraiser. I hope these comments help. If you have any questions, as always, please feel free to email me or give me a call at any time. I appreciate it and have a good evening.